Yeah.
Thumbs
Perfect.
up.
But you may, yeah. There you go.
Perfect. So it's a real honor, a privilege to be here with you all today, and it's a great opportunity to dive in to explore a little bit more of some of the trends from an economic development on the ground that are at play in Orange County, and some of the things around the state and nation that are kind of informing what's going on. I think it's a great pivot from, looking at kind of the future of work and what's taking shape from a jobs that can be automated, probably will be. And what does that mean from an upstream investment in skills and infrastructure and talent development and coordination and governance? And I think at this moment for CERF, it's a great opportunity for us to think about all those, ingredients going into what an equitable economic development framework looks like. So, the Milken Institute does this, famous ranking of best performing cities each year. And although this isn't reflective of the top rankings for this upcoming installment of that indice, this is a reflection of where the top tier of California cities will fall within that ranking. So, we look at, and we kind of extrapolate some of those inputs that are leading to economic outputs in terms of these regional centers. We see a lot of service industry, logistics in Riverside, biotech, Silicon Valley, software development up in Silicon Valley. Same with San Francisco, in terms of software, digital technology, biotech, and in San Diego. I'm not sure what's going on in Santa Barbara, but we look at and I think we can be bolstered here a bit as we get a bit more into the weeds around what we're seeing in the MSA that we're currently focused on. I mean, this is the highest ranking, what we call Southern California, among the SCAG kind of region. And so, when we look at what's happening in the Anaheim, Santa Ana, Irvine area from a technology development, a small business incubation, from an industry concentration, it seems like a good opportunity for us to dive a bit more in there and see where investments can be made in a more precise, or interventions in a more precise manner that can lead to more equitable growth. And in terms of coming out of the recession, we know that we've heard a lot of this narrative around out-migration and what that means from a business standpoint. I think there's been a lot of counter narrative to that around, what's driving growth. At the same time, we know that, LA County lost the most people of any county in the United States post, if this is a post-COVID reality. Orange County, at the same time, lost more people than it gained in the previous 4 years. And I think, looking at some of those cost of living trends, housing, affordability, jobs, and economic mobility, what are some of the things that we can look at there from a sector concentration standpoint that can provide more upward mobility? How can we drive some of those investments in sector growth and development that can lead to better paying jobs and but as an extension, more equitable economic development? And the employment growth, although I think this might be a little not as a cause for alarm as it might appear on its surface because of the nature of growth. I think the big uptick in Inland Empire economic growth in its post-COVID reality is largely a rebounding of service and some of the jobs that were unable to operate in a COVID dynamic. As we dig a little bit deeper into the numbers, Orange County's economic framework is as you'll see is largely composed of a higher tech or higher wage job development growth, which I think the trend lines are still at least in our favor. And this paints a little bit more of that picture in terms of we're losing ground in terms of low wage employment, and I think a little bit more concerning in that middle wage area. Like the middle class is losing pace in Orange County, it seems, while high wage job growth and the gap between the low wages is growing larger. And we break this down into the demographics. I think sadly this narrative is repeated across the state, and maybe more largely around the nation, in terms of who Black and brown, American Indian, and other indigenous populations, and who has access to higher paying jobs, who has access to more economic mobility. Where and a question for CERF is, and any kind of CERF investment scenario, I think we'll have to address, where do we make those kind of upstream investments in terms of talent growth, talent development, skills, pivoting off of the last conversation, where are those jobs that are being automated or that can be automated? How do we create more career pathways and make those kind of investments in jobs that people can do? And again, I think the slowing nature of that, the hollowing out there, I think kind of speaks to some of the lagging nature in growth that we're seeing, compared in terms of the percentages of other counties and regions in the state. Again, I'm not sure if this is cause for alarm, but just reflective of the businesses and economic activity that's in the region, which again tend to offer more opportunity and higher wages. And I think this gets a bit more into some of the strengths as a sector composition. So when we look at a comparative analysis across the state, across other regions, Orange County does, and this MSA in particular, the sectors in terms of manufacturing, healthcare, and other types of professional services tend to be more highly concentrated in Orange County, especially in life sciences, which Arizona has a very, in particular, I just got back from Phoenix, and they gave us this nice big presentation of all the investments that's going in there in terms of life sciences and how the campuses and ASU is all involved there. I think UC Irvine especially can play a very similar role in concentrating a lot of those R&D and spillover effects in the region, for an example, as a kind of a sector orientation around growth. I think we saw a bit of this at a state level. There was a really nice California 100 report that talked about some of the strengths of California small businesses, and in terms of applications for entrepreneurs and other small businesses, Orange County is definitely showing big percentage growth here. Just a bit more reflection of what that looks like from how Orange County's small business environment is growing in strength, which is a great indicator of local job growth and kind of regional dynamism. But and one thing I think a trend throughout the state that we'll need to put a pin in for further conversation is what does a continuing vacancy look like for our real estate? Like, where are there opportunities for co-developments around commercial, retail, housing that can leverage some vacancies, or what do we do, or how do we induce kind of a not just a return to work, but a return to business, in terms of inducing economic recovery, especially in our downtowns. And again, largely reflective of trends around the state. Housing units and our production woes are somewhat experienced here in Orange County. Overall housing development is slowed. Multifamily permits are way down. But it's not as bad as it is in other parts of the state in terms of rent burden. and cost burden, which is still relatively high. And again, renters of color experience the most challenges, which is largely reflective of some of the inequities in housing and production and capital access and long-term redlining scenarios that are kind of woven into the system. But as we move out of this kind of reflective period of where our assets are, of what kind of conditions are driving growth, we have to acknowledge that this is a big moment of federal spending opportunity for the region to harness. The billions and billions of dollars that have been programmed through the IIJA, which is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, and the Inflation Reduction Act, is really a moment for the nation and regions across the nation to reflect on in reindustrialization. What does that look like for us in terms of renewable energy opportunities? What is our ecosystem composed of? Where are the land opportunities in the region? How does innovation play a role in driving growth in Orange County? What's our workforce imperative? How does our infrastructure strategy support all of this from an investment standpoint and coordination standpoint? And how do we support small businesses further and make it easier for them to grow and operate? But these are just some of the questions we can throw out there and devise a bit more solutions toward. But thanks, Micah, and let me know if there's any questions.
Yeah, just one question we'll pull in here, and then we're going to give you a little bit of an update on some opportunities that are available to participate in the process. But just wanted to make sure that there was a question about service sector jobs and whether they were counted in your slides. And Luis, I'm not sure if there was a particular slide that you had in mind on service sector or just
Yeah, I'll send that. We'll send the slide deck around, Mike, to everybody, but especially for our purposes, I'm not sure if I numbered these, but it looks like slide 9 or 8 has a good percentage of service sector jobs broken down into retail and food services. So there's a reflection of how those are counted here. But again, they're not among the highest sectors or industries of employment in the region for Orange County, which is somewhat of an outlier in Southern California.
Great, thanks, Matt. Well, we'll do a deep dive, but I wanted to turn it over to Jesse for a couple of minutes to talk about a survey that we'd love for you folks to complete for our stakeholder map.